RE drafters and commander players, because we're here today to talk about the Commander Legends, Dungeons and Dragons, Battle for Baldur's Gate. We're going to be talking about a bit of a pre-release guide and a draft guide, and it's going to be focusing on the archetypes and the mechanics and kind of how they all play, what you need to look out for if you're going to be drafting a certain archetype, and just the way that these decks are going to play. If you want to see a bit more about how the draft's going to work and things like that, I've got a separate video. You can see the link up top now, and there'll be a link below as well, and that'll tell you a little bit how this works. Anyway, going into it, the draft mechanics. Now, it is important to say it is draft because pre-release is going to be draft this time, not sealed. If you don't know how to do a draft, then I advise you to have a little look about how to do it. It's not too scary. It's a fairly easy thing to get your head around, although it's one of those easy to learn, difficult to master things. I do have my own video of a very basic how to draft, which I'll put in the description below. And yeah, if you've played some Magic, if you know how Magic works, don't be afraid of going to draft. It is absolutely fine, and you will enjoy yourself. And pre-releases in particular, especially a Commander pre-release, is going to be a fairly casual time. But there are some differences with the draft. So the cards have packs have 20 cards in, unlike a normal set where you have 15 cards in a pack. And because there's more cards in a pack, so the draft doesn't take forever, you take 2 picks per pack. And this helps speed things up a little bit. And I think it's something that people will miss. I know people missed it in the previous Commander Legends set. So if you get past a pack, just count your cards, double check, because people will forget it. Believe you and me, people are so used to just taking one card and passing on that even if you go, I know I need to, take one, pass it on. It happens. Also, it is if you're doing the pre-release, you get a pre-release promo in your pack. This is like your pick 0, so this goes straight in your pool. You don't have to play it because, especially if it doesn't fit your commander's color identity, then you won't be able to play it. You don't have to include that in your deck, but it is an option to have in your deck, and you know what it is before you even open your first pack. For deck construction, instead of building a 100-card commander deck or a 40-card traditional limited deck, you're going to be building a 60-card deck. And this is a bit of a balance between the two. It's also a deck size where people are kind of used to knowing how to build, because that's what 60-card constructed formats are like. Don't worry if you've never played a format like that. It's just a 60-card deck. You're going to want about 25 lands. I know 24 is kind of the average for a normal like standard deck or a modern deck or a pioneer deck, but in this format you probably want about 25 lands. It goes a little bit slower than like your streamlined constructed decks, but that could change if you have a load of mana rocks and stuff. There's no singleton rules, so taking the singleton rule out, that's mainly because if you're doing the draft and you want to and you get past a load of the same card and you just can't take it because you've already got one, it just kind of takes that out of things and makes the draft a little bit more kind of worthwhile, make them work a little bit better. And you're also going to have to play your deck to match your commander's color identity. So if you have a blue-green commander, you can't play any red cards, and you can't play anything like Fire Diamond, which would, as you can see on your screen right now, which has a red color pip in the rules text. So just bear that in mind. Going on to the gameplay, very much commander here. You're going to have 40 life. You're going to be playing in a pot of 4. You're going to have 40 life. Everybody gets a free mulligan because it's going to be a best of 1 game, and then you do your normal mulligans after that. And then the starting player draws a card at the start of their first turn, unlike in 1v1 format. So in anything where it's multiplayer, generally the starting player will draw a card at the start of their turn, because otherwise they are a bit disadvantaged by going first. Going to talk about the commanders, and we're going to talk about our first mechanic in background. Now, background's a little bit like partner. It's quite a lot like partner, but there are some key differences. So with partner, you would choose 2 different creatures, each with partner. Here, you need to choose a legendary creature with choose a background, and all of the monocolored commanders in the set have this choose a background on them. And then you also need to choose one of these backgrounds. So it's a legendary enchantment, and it's just an enchantment that you can cast from the command zone. It's like another commander. They all only affect the commander. So here we've got Wilson Refined Grizzly, pretty cool character apparently, so I've been told. And then you've got Shameless Charlatan, so your Wilson is a Shameless Charlatan, and that's kind of the flavour behind it. So you have this background, and it's kind of representative of a D&D character where you have your character, but they've also got a bit of a background behind them, and that tells you how they've been how it's worked. Now you could build this and you get a blue-green deck, or you could get a different background, and then you got Street Urchin here, and then you'll have a green-red deck, so it changes the way that this commander plays almost. And it's a cool way to do it. I think it is a little bit more difficult than partner, because with partner you just had like 2 creatures, and you only ever had to think about creatures. Here you need a creature and an enchantment, and I think that just makes it a little bit more difficult to come together. I mean, you can still kind of pick up a good creature and a bad background early on, and then you might get a better background later on. But if you get a better creature and you don't know which one to play, I don't know. I think it's a little bit trickier. Also, these will only ever work in 2 colours, so you only have a monocoloured creature and a monocoloured background, and it only allows you 2 colours. In fact, most of the commanders and the decks you're going to build in this set will be 2 colours. There's a lot of monocoloured commanders and monocoloured backgrounds, which I've already talked about. I think it's 4 or 5 in each colour or something like that. If that's just the commanders, and then you have 3 or 4 backgrounds in each colour as well. But then there's also 2 cycles of 10 2-colour commanders. So you've got the uncommon ones here, as I'm just disappearing. You've got the 2-colour uncommon ones here, which are kind of like your signpost uncommons that you have in a normal draft set. And they kind of tell you how the draft kind of works. But there's also some rare commanders as well. So there's a cycle of 10 rare 2-colour commanders, 1 for each colour pair. And these play quite differently to the 2-colour ones. I'm going to go back to the uncommon ones. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the uncommon ones in a little bit when I go through the different archetypes, and I'll look at them in a little bit more focus, because these will be probably the ones that people will play around quite a lot, and they're all quite good, I think. But you have the rare cycle as well, and then there's also a cycle of 3-colour commanders at rare. So these are, I think they are going to be priorities. Some of them aren't like the best commanders in the world, but they give you access to a 3rd colour, and I think that's going to be really, really invaluable in the format. It just gives you access to more strong cards that are coming around. You know, again, if you're green and red and there's a really good white card comes around, you can't play it, but if you're green, red, white, then you can play it. You're still not going to be able to pick up every single card, but I think if I see one of these 3-colour commanders quite early on, I'm going to be snap picking it and trying to build around it. There are 3 more dual colour commanders that we need to talk about, and these are all planeswalkers. So these are the only 3 planeswalkers in the set, and they can all be a commander. So just so you're aware that the planeswalkers can all be commanders, and that's kind of how they work if you just happen to miss that line of text. There's 1 mythic commander, there's 1 mythic legendary creature, and that's Volo. Yeah, I'll put it on the screen. I don't have it in my notes right now, but yeah, you have Volo, which is the only mythic commander. There's no mythic backgrounds, there's no mythic 2-colour or 3-colour or any multicolour commanders, so that kind of gives you a bit of a rundown of the commanders. I haven't shown you all of the single colour stuff because there's a lot to show, and it's just part of the fun when you're going to be playing it. Just bear in mind as well, this video isn't meant to be like a high strategy video. It's just giving you an overview. Commander is a casual format. It is not a really competitive focus format, and it's going to be the same when you're doing the draft. Yes, okay, you might be trying to win, but I think it's more about making sure you're building a cohesive deck which does the thing that you wanted to do. Even if you don't win, you kind of want your deck to work, and I think that's what I'm focusing on with this video. The next mechanic I want to talk about is probably the one that most questions are going to be coming around, because I don't think it's super intuitive, but it's not actually too difficult once you know how it works. So it's the initiative, and this is kind of a cross or a combination of the monarch, if you've played with that before, where a player becomes a monarch when something tells them to, and also venture into the dungeon. So the way it works, you'll get a card which says you get the initiative, and that means you get this little token, a bit like the monarch token, where it says you have the initiative. You can lose that initiative if you are hit with a creature. So if somebody attacks you and hits you with a creature, then they get the initiative from you. If they play a card which says they get the initiative, or if you die, if you lose a game, and then it goes to the next person in turn order. So just bear in mind that is the kind of the way it works. And what happens is, when you get the initiative, or at the beginning of your upkeep, when you have the initiative, you venture into the Undercity. So this is just like venturing into the dungeon from AFR, if you remember that. And if you're not sure how it works, there's plenty of things around to tell you how venture works. But instead of choosing one of the 3 dungeons from AFR, you go through the Undercity. These rooms are a little bit more powerful than the ones were in AFR, and that's intentional because you're going to be playing Commander. It's a 4-player game usually, and that's going to be just kind of how it works. So you have a card which says you get the initiative. That means you venture into the dungeon, you'll go through 1 room, and then if it gets all the way around again before nobody hits you, and you don't get anybody else playing a card that gives them the initiative, when it gets to your upkeep again, you can venture through the dungeon. There's some cards which care about you have completing the dungeon. There's some cards which care about you having the initiative. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I've saw some. So that's kind of how this works. Quite simple, really, but I think it is going to lead to quite a few questions. So now you know how it works. Got another mechanic here in Goad. So I think there's a lot of mechanics, a bit like the initiative, where it's encouraging people to attack other players, and Goad, which is kind of making people attack other players, where it's trying to get this combat going in the game, because Commander Legends 1 had a lot of board stalls, and I think they're trying to get around that by just putting more mechanics in to encourage people to attack. So you've got things like Oceanus Dragon. When it ends the battlefield, go to creature. This means that until at the creature's next turn, it must attack, and it must attack a player other than you if able. Now, if you're the only other player that it can attack, then it's got to attack you. It can't attack a different player, so it's got to attack you. But generally, if you're playing with more than one player in the pod, then it's got to attack a different player. So the normal way, if a creature is goaded, then that's how it works. But there are some things like Martial Impetus here, where it's kind of an ongoing effect, where the creature is goaded to kind of without a particular end. Of course, if you destroy the aura here, then it won't be goaded anymore, but it's kind of like a continuous goad, and that means every combat needs to attack, and it needs to attack somebody other than you if it can. Another mechanic I've got is Myriad. So this is a really good one because it kind of ticks a lot of boxes with the way things that the colour pairs are trying to do. So you've got, when a creature with Myriad attacks, you create a token copy, which copies and kind of goes at each other player that you can attack as well. So if you attack one player, you're actually attacking all three. You create a token, and then at the end of combat, those tokens are exiled. Now, in the set, we've got enter battlefield mechanics, we've got leave the battlefield mechanics, we've got token mechanics, and we've got the things that care about the number of players you're attacking. So this kind of ticks a lot of boxes in the format, and I think it's going to be really good. It's quite a strong effect. There's a 1-mana 1/1 Myriad creature. There's I think it's mainly in blue and in white and red, but it might be a little bit elsewhere as well. We've got Blade of Selves, which is going to be a powerful equipment, which we've seen reprinted, and it gives the equipped creature Myriad, so there's going to be some really powerful things you can do with that. Note that the copies are legendary still, so you can't really do Myriad with a legendary creature, so you don't really want to equip the Blade of Selves to your commander, unless it's a Dies effect. That's going to be quite good. I remember I used to play Omnath of Rage, and I really wanted a Blade of Selves for that, back when I used to play commander. I don't really play that very much anymore. But yeah, so I think it's a good comeback. I think it's another way we can kind of encourage attacks because it makes your attacks more powerful, and yeah, I think it's quite a cool effect. Another mechanic which has come back, and it's really flavorful for D&D. It wasn't in the last D&D, but it was from Throne of Eldraine, is Adventure. So if you've not played with Adventure before, then the cards kind of split in two. You've got the instant or sorcery side, where it's usually going to be a smaller mana cost, and if you cast that, you kind of exile a creature, put it off to one side, the creature's away on an adventure, and then later on you can cast the creature side as well. So you've got the Young Blue Dragon, which the first side, 1 blue, scry 1, draw a card. That can be something to do early in the game, and then later in the game you can cast your 5 mana 3/3 Flying Dragon. It looks like quite a weak card. It isn't the most powerful card in the world, but the fact that you get these 2 spells in one is really useful. Now, in the past, the spells have only been creatures on the adventure side. It was a creature that went out on an adventure. We've got a few other things here. So you've got an equipment here with the Ghost Lantern. So it's not just limited to creatures on the right hand side anymore, on the main part of the spell, but the left hand side is still just instants or sorceries. One thing is probably worth mentioning as well, if you want to, you don't have to cast the adventure side first. You can just cast the creature side first, you can just cast the creature side first, and then or the equipment side first, but then you don't get to cast the instant or sorcery. But sometimes that may be something that you want to do. And the last mechanic that we want to talk about is dice rolling. So this is an effect where at some point you'll roll a d20, and it will always be d20s in the main set. I know that you can get d6 and d8 and d10 and stuff outside, but it's always going to be a d20 in the main set. And you roll a dice, and then whatever you roll, you're going to do the effect. So you've got the Nothic here. When it dies, you roll a d20, so it's a 4, 3 for 5. When it dies, you roll a d20. If you get 1 and 9, so just under half the amount of time, you draw a card and lose a life. If you get 10 to 19, which is half the time, you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. It's usually a slightly better effect. You might die from that one, but the last one is really interesting because you get a 20, you get the kind of the nat 20, the critical hit, and you draw 7 cards and you lose 7 life. So this is potentially a very powerful effect. You get to draw 7 cards, but if you're really low on life, you might not want to get that 20. And I think that's going to be kind of funny when it happens. And if it was playing quite casually, it'd be like, oh no, and then it's just kind of a good talking point. I think it's a really cool card. I like that design. Similar things for the other ones. They all kind of work the same way. You roll a d20. Sometimes the number ranges are a bit different. Sometimes you have this 20. Sometimes you don't. But yeah, I think it's a cool effect, and I'm pleased to see it come back. If you have watched this far, then thank you very much for watching. I put a screen for Magic Arena up on the a code for Magic Arena up on the screen. It is a code. I think it's just for a single pack of Midnight Hunt or something like that. But it's just what I get, and I hope you get something out of it. If you do get it, do comment below. And if you have any questions on the video so far or anything that comes up, do comment below. I do tend to reply to comments and see if I can help out. It's really appreciated. Also, fun fact, if everybody who watches to this point subscribes to the video, I will most likely hit 1,000, if not 2,000 or more subscribers, and that is, I'm aiming to get 1,000 really, really soon. And I think it's a good goal for me. It means that I'm that much closer to being a YouTube partner, and I can just, start getting a little bit of money that I can put back in the channel and make these videos a bit better. Definitely want to get a green screen at some point so I can kind of get rid of this border a little bit. I've been meaning to get on for a little while, but there's things I want to do to improve the channel, and it does help me do that if you do the subscribe thing, if you do the watching thing, and if you kind of like the videos, just to pump them up, and it's just what you can do to help me. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about now is some of the archetypes. I'm going to go through each archetype, look at the uncommon commander, see how that works, and talk about some cards that are in the set in common and uncommon. Told a lie, I'm actually going to talk about fixing very quickly before we do that. So there's a lot of fixing in this set. There's some really good fixing. I think that's because you've got to stick your commander's colour identity. You can't have more than 3 colours, and even that's going to be kind of rare cases. Then you're not going to end up with these kind of 5-colour soup where it takes all the good stuff and they don't really need to worry about the fixing. So you've got some really good lands. The example is this kind of thriving gate cycle. So you've got the sea gate here where it taps a blue. This can only go in a blue deck, by the way, so you can only play this if you have blue as your commander, but when it comes to the battlefield, you choose another colour and then taps that other colour. It comes in tapped, but it's a gate. There's gate synergies going on in the set as well. Loads of mana rocks like Arcane Signet, which is good for fixing, or just Marble Diamond, which is good for a bit of ramp. And, fixing is going to be there, especially lands. Make sure you're going to take some lands because it's going to be useful. You're going to be drafting 60 cards, and you're only going to be playing about 35 of those, so there'll be 25 or so cards, which will either be lands, which you can add in as well, or cards that you wouldn't kind of play anyway. They'll just be in your sideboard. Not that you do much sideboarding in Commander, but it makes sense to pick some lands and some fixing just to kind of make your deck tick over that little bit better. I'm going to start with 3 linked archetypes. So the 3 colour pairs that make up Temur, so that's blue, red, and green, are all to do with dragons. And there are dragons in other colours as well, but they are kind of centred in these Temur colours. So blue-green is a variation on Dragon's theme on the value dragons. So kind of casting some of the big spells, getting a bit of ramp in there, but also getting the card advantage as well. It looks like quite a good one, the type of Simic deck that I would like to build. You've got Coalescer, which allows you to cast your dragon spells off the top of your library, so it's even better than drawing a card because you can potentially even kind of storm off with dragons if you hit a few in a row. You've got smaller dragons, so there are some small dragons in this set because you've got the Dragonkin from D&D, which don't really exist in the normal Magic universe. So you have these lower cost dragons like the Scaled Nurturer here, which allows you to ramp into the other dragons. It allows you gain life when you cast a dragon spell from it, and that life helps you get there with the bigger dragons. Then you've got some big dragons, like you've got the Oceanus dragon here, which it taps a creature opponent controls and you go to it. It's a 6 mana 3/5 flyer, gets a little bit of advantage there, but it just is an example of some of these bigger dragons that you can ramp into and that you can get some good advantage out of. Green-red is the power dragon, so it cares about the power of the creature. And you can see here with Thrakus the Butcher, it's a 3/4 trample for 5, which seems quite underwhelming, but whenever Thrakus the Butcher attacks, double the power of each dragon you control until end of turn. So it attacks, seeing as the dragon itself, dragon peasant for some reason, but seeing as the dragon itself, it doubles its own power, so it goes from a 3/4 to a 6/4, and if you've got anything that kind of modifies a power, so you've got a couple +1/+1 counters on there, and it's a 5/6, it would become a 10/6 with trample, and that's going to be attacking quite strongly there. It doesn't have flying, but it's still quite good. You've got other big dragons in here, so you've got Dread Lindworm here, can't be blocked by creature power 3 or less, and it's a 7/6, so that'll be attacking as a 14/6 if it attacks with Thrakus. And then Young Red Dragon isn't a big expensive dragon, the power isn't huge, but you can see it can't block, so the idea is going to be attacking with this one, and if you can make that from a 3/2 flyer into a 6/2 flyer, you're going to be quite happy. So I think Thrakus, again, trying to encourage attacking, and if you want to attack in this format, you're going to want to do things with power. You're going to want to take more life off your opponents because it's going to be starting at 40. You've got multiple opponents. You're not going to really want to leave yourself defenses down if you are attacking, so I think that's a way it's trying to get around. I think I prefer Simic to this one, but it's still quite a good archetype. And the last of the dragon archetypes is blue-red, so this is dragons and spells. You've got Lozan, so it cares about whether you cast a dragon spell or an instant or sorcery, and the most obvious way to kind of abuse this are the dragons which are also adventure cards. So you've got Fang Dragon on the right here, it's got the instant or sorcery as the left hand side, and all of the adventure cards have an instant or sorcery on the left hand side where it counts for part of it, and then if it's a dragon creature, then you've got the dragon side on the right hand side. And you see here again it's got big power, so that kind of crosses over the green-red archetype. There's other things as well, some good instant sorceries. This is your only really spell slinger archetype, so a lot of the instant sorceries will be centered in here, the ones that really care about the value. Draconic Law, draw 3 cards for 6 mana, at instant speed, but it costs 2 less if you control the dragons, so it's kind of ticking both boxes on both sides of this spells and dragons thing going on here as well. This blue-white archetype is one that I quite like. It's a Blink archetype, kind of enters the battlefield matters. And I really enjoyed this in the original Kaladesh set. I think it was one of my favourite ones, and it's not something that you see very often, so I think that's part of the reason why I like it. So you've got Oji. It's 2 white and a blue for a 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and you scry 2, which is quite a good little effect for entering the battlefield. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, exile up to 1 creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. So you blink it, it goes out and comes back in again, and you get this enters the battlefield. And you've got other creatures which care about entering the battlefield. So on the left here, you've got Roven Harper. So this is just a 3 mana 2/2, enters the battlefield, draw a card. But if you can flicker that, if you can get it enter the battlefield again and again and again and again, you get to draw a lot of cards. And you've got some other spells which kind of help this blink thing. So you've got Blur, 2 and a blue. Flicker a creature, and then you also get to draw a card off it as well. So if you flicker a Roven Harper, this is going to draw you 2 cards. It can help you protect your creatures. So if you have somebody trying to remove OG, you can flicker OG, and then you get the gain 2 life, scry 2 coming off again, as well as drawing cards. So it's an archetype I quite like. I like the value base of it, and I think there's some really, really cool enter the battlefield effects that we're having here. Black-White, on the other hand, cares about things leaving the battlefield. So there's definitely some crossover between the two. You've got some things which have effect when they enter and leave the battlefield. Now, leaving could be anything. It could be from flickering effect, so you can flicker out and bring it back again. It could be from a dying. It could be from being sacrificed, or it could be from being exiled. So there's a lot of ways you can get things to leave the battlefield. You got Minthara, which has the only experience counter card I think we've had since they originally came out. So if you're not aware, when you get experience counters, they go on the player, they go on you, not the creature. So if the creature goes away and comes back, those experience counters still exist. So it's a good way to kind of build up value over time and then not worry if your commander dies. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control leaves a battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter, and then creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have. So it just means that your creatures get more and more power, and you can kind of attack things in the other opponents and not really care. Now, one of the good ways that we can take things off the battlefield is Myriad. So when a creature of Myriad attacks, you can attack somebody with the defenses down. You got this Tabaxi Toucanas, so you got toucans in Magic, which is kind of cool. But you can attack somebody with no flyers. It'll get in there. You'll get the Myriad copies going to other players. Even if they're blocked and don't do anything, this is going to be something leaving the battlefield. So that's quite good. Also, if you have these Myriad creatures with this +1/+0 ability, that's going to be really good because you're going to be multiplying the power across all of the creatures, really. We've got other things as well. So you've got Guildsworn Prowler here. It's a 2/1 with Death Touch for 2 mana. When it dies, if it wasn't blocking, draw a card. So it means it's like a Death Touch creature where you might want to use it for defensive, but it's really a attacking matters card. So your opponent won't really want to block it, but if they do block it, their creature will die. You'll draw a card. This is quite a good creature. But also, if you're getting in, you can maybe just get the initiative, and that kind of links it in the blue black as well, which we're going to see in a moment. But and then if you have the +1/+0, so you might have like 3 or 4 experience counters, in which case there's quite a lot of power coming in that they feel like they have to block, but then they don't want to block, and it's some interesting decisions to be made. As I kind of just alluded to, Dimir, blue-black, is caring about getting the initiative. It's caring about going through that dungeon and completing it. You've got Rilsa here. It's 2/5 for 5 mana, Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature against Death Touch. So this doesn't have to attack to do this. Target attacking creature against Death Touch until end of turn. If you've completed the dungeon, that creature gets +5/+0 against First Strike and Menace until end of turn. So First Strike, Menace, Death Touch, and Big Power means that it's going to kill 2. If it don't block it, it's going to kill 2 creatures that the opponent controls every turn, and it's probably not going to die itself. So it's a really good combination of things there. We've got a lot of things which get you the initiative. So there's a lot of things in blue and black which is when it enters the battlefield you get the initiative. But you've got Vicious Battle Rage on the right here. So whenever it becomes blocked by a creature, if that creature's controller loses 5 life, so it gets you the initiative when it comes in, then you attack with it. It's only a 1/5. It can quite happily the opponent can quite happily block it all day. But if they do, they lose 5 life. If you hit them, they can lose the initiative and you get the initiative. And it's just a way to kind of, again, focus on some good attacking creatures here. It's probably not going to die in a lot of board states. You can attack to somebody who's got a couple of 2/2s and it's not going to die. But, it's quite a good little effect. It's not a bad blocker either, I suppose. We've got Feywild Caretaker here. So this was something that cares about getting the initiative, gets you the initiative, but also at your end step. So this is something which cares about having the initiative at your end step, not your upkeep like the initiative itself does. You get a 1/1 Fairy Dragon creature token with flying. And this means that you can then attack with the flyers and you get in and get the initiative a bit more. So it's an uncommon, which is why it's maybe a little bit more powerful, but it's a really good effect, and I think something that can kind of really benefit from being in this archetype. Red-black is caring about creating treasures. Now, I don't think it's going to be like the original AFR where your treasure deck was really good, because part of the reason that was really good is it could splash pretty much any card in the set, because you make all these treasures and you'd be able to splash. Because we're going to be limited by the commander's colour identity in this format, it's not that much of a big deal, and it's a bit like when we were looking at the Vixen earlier on. So you've got Mardi, Emporium Master, 3 mana, 3/3. Beginning of the end step, create a treasure token for each creature that died this turn. So you got a little bit of this creature dying stuff going on as well with this particular one. To help this, you got Mold Folks. So this is an interesting card, and I think it's really well designed. So it's a 2 mana, 1/1 lifelink, which is kind of fine, but not great by itself. It's got 1, sacrifice another creature and artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Mold Folk. So you can sacrifice either some token creatures or something like that, or you can sacrifice artifact. You can sacrifice a treasure. You can't pay for this effect with a treasure and then sacrifice it, because it's partly a sacrifice effect, but it is another way you can use your treasures, and this can be done at instant speed, and it's quite a low cost. So if you're blocking with a few things and they're just kind of chump blocking, then you can sacrifice them to this. Just point out that Mardi cares about things happening in your end steps, so it's not going to kind of work in other people's end steps if you sacrifice them to mold folk, but it does kind of still work quite well. We've got Peter in the Arts here, which is a really interesting card because it kind of fits all of the different archetypes you can have. It's a dragon, it makes treasure, it's got end of the battlefield ability, it's got a dies trigger. And, it's just quite a good creature. It's got quite a big power, 3/1 for 3 with all these other abilities as well. It just seems to tick a lot of boxes, and I thought it goes particularly well in this archetype, but it's definitely got homes in other archetypes as well. Probably pick these quite highly, especially if I'm not exactly sure which direction I'm going to go. Green-white is talking about tokens, so you're creating tokens, and you've got the Kadira, and 3 mana for a 3/3 trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, create a token for each. Create a 1/1 rabbit for each token you control. So if you've got a load of tokens, and it doesn't have to be creature tokens, no, you can have your treasures in this as well. So if you've got these tokens, then you get a 1/1 rabbit for each of these tokens that you control, so you double them out. If you get double strike on this, it's even better because you create the tokens for, say you've got 3 treasures, you'll create 3 rabbits, and the next turn you'll create the next hit, you'll create another 6 rabbits. So getting this double strike will be really good. There's not a huge amount of ways to do that in this format, but there are some ways you can do it. And we've got different ways of getting some tokens in these colours. So you've got Carefree Swine Master. It is a 1/4 when it attacks, and you pay 1 and a green. If you do, create a 2/2 green ball that's tapped and attacking. So it's one way to make some tokens. You also got Recruitment Drive, which is a D20 card that I quite like. Roll a D20 for 3 mana. You either get 2 1/1s, which is a bit rubbish, 2 2/2s, which is quite good, or even if you hit the 20, you get 3 2/2s. So it's a cool way to kind of put a little bit of a random element in with this. Another good thing to point out is with Myriad. Myriad creates tokens, which is going to affect this as well. So it's another place where Myriad is a really good mechanic to have, which kind of goes across a lot of different archetypes. So I think I'll be picking Myriad cards, especially white Myriad cards, quite highly in the format. Black-green is a pretty typical Golgari type of archetype. You mill some stuff and you get the value from usually the creatures in your graveyard. So Kaga is a creature, when you attack, you mill 2 cards and also gains Death Touch. So it doesn't have Death Touch on defense, it only has Death Touch on attack again. And during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a permanent spell. That's a creature, planeswalker, artifact, or enchantment from your graveyard, from cards among that were just milled. So milled this turn. So either milled by Kaga or something else. So it could be milled from something like Druidic Ritual, which mills some cards and you return any creature from your graveyard to your hand. And you've also got Sigil of Miracle, which mills some cards, but also has an effect that comes from milling cards, from having a lot of different things in your graveyard. So, you've got a couple of different effects in here. It's definitely self-mill, it's definitely getting value from the graveyard. It's a fairly typical Golgari mechanic. And, it will do some stuff. The final archetype we're going to talk about is red-white Boros, and it's a very, very Boros archetype here. It cares about attacking, and it usually cares about the number of opponents that you're attacking, so it works really well in multiplayer where you can attack more than one opponent at once. So you got Commander Liara Porter. When you attack, spells you cast from exile this turn cost X less to cast, where X is the number of players being attacked. Exile top X cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among those exiled cards. So if you attack all 3 opponents, you exile 2 cards on top of your library, you can cast them and they'll cost 2 less. Doesn't reduce the coloured mana, but it is a way to get some value off attacking a number of opponents like this. You've got Worms Crossing Patrol. So this is the 1-mana 1/1 Myriad I've talked about. It's a cool card. I think it will go in a lot of decks. If it's something could get it quite early, and it kind of does help with a lot of these different archetypes that's going on. And you've also got Panic Attacks. Sorry, not Panic Attack, Pack Attack. So attacking creatures get +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of players being attacked. Draw a card. So you attack on all 3 of your opponents, then everything gets +3/+0. You draw a card, it can be cast at instant speed, so you can catch people out with it. And this is going to be one that I'll be looking out for, especially if my opponent's playing red. I'll be worried that, okay, we've got this combat math that's going on here, but what if all of their stuff got +3/+0? How does that affect things? How much of my stuff do I lose? Do I just die? And I think it's something that we need to be aware of. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Like I say, I am trying to go for that high subscription goal, so if you can subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. You can also follow along at Twitter, at PLDMTG. But I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.